O kia ora whānau. Welcome to a Friday night special here in the Department of Conversation. We're not normally here on a Friday night. We had a chance to chat to Sam Warburton this afternoon. Sam is one of the economists, independent economists, who put out some information about the National Party's plan for how they're going to fund tax cuts. I had a chance to grab him this afternoon, and I feel like it's too long to wait until Monday to play it. So a little special episode for you. It's only 20-25 minutes long, but little special episode for you just tonight, just to have a look at this one interview. Whilst we're here, let me remind you that Tuesday night next week is the first leaders debate. We will be simulcasting it at 7 p.m. So make sure you're here with us at 7 p.m. next Tuesday. Regular broadcastings resume Monday at 9 p.m. And quite a lot to talk about. We will have a look in more detail at the finance leaders debate. I hear that Nicola Willis won't long be in a job because she's guaranteed she will resign should they not be able to do what they say they can do with their tax cuts. So that means she's gone. And also I read that David Seymour's announcement today, being Friday, is very much focused on smashing people on the benefit, smashing people with drug and alcohol problems, and seems quite draconian and repugnant. But what else would you expect from David Seymour? So we'll cover all that off in more detail on Monday, because I'm sure also as we go through the weekend, more information will be released as the ACT Party are officially launching their campaign this weekend as well. So that's it for now. Thank you for everyone who's with us this evening, or if you're watching this on demand. Remember to follow us on Twitter. Follow me on TikTok as well now. There's lots of stuff happening on TikTok at the moment. Quite a big audience growing there, which is nice. And other than that, head to the Patreon. We're sort of finished with our merch drop for this month. So we will be reminding you guys of our Patreon as we go through the next few weeks in the lead up to the election. So Sam Warburton was amazing today. The conversation is fascinating. If you haven't caught the clip already, that is on TikTok and is on Twitter, then enjoy the full conversation, and we will see you live on Monday night at 9 p.m. for the next edition of Big Hairy News. Be safe. As we welcome to the show economist Sam Warburton, who was a part of this research, this article, this information that was released in the last couple of days. It was kind of sold as economists on the left and on the right come to a similar agreement that there's a pretty big fiscal hole in National's plans to generate income to pay for their tax cuts. Sam, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Have I synopsised that okay? Is that pretty fair what I just said?
Yeah, I think we've been avoiding fiscal hole because it's been that term's been run into the ground. But you're more than welcome to use it.
Very quickly then, let's just have a look at how it was written up on RNZ. Economists analysis rubbishes National's foreign buyer tax numbers. The first paragraph says economists analysing National's foreign buyers tax have found it would likely raise $210 million a year, falling well short of the $740 million a year National expects to rake in. Paragraph here specifically says economist Sam Warburton, welcome, and Michael Redell, who lean left and right respectively, decided to do their own analysis using data from Stats NZ, real estate data from CoreLogic, and the information National has so far publicly revealed about its policy. Their independent modelling resulted in, quote, best estimate, end quote, of $210 million a year in revenue, leaving a gap of $530 million or 71% between their data and National's proposal. A more generous, higher end estimate, end quote, calculated at $290 million in revenue, still falling $450 million or 61% short. Why, Sam, did you feel the need, I guess off your own bat? No one paid for this. That's how I read the word independent.
That's right. No one paid for it. It wasn't a suggestion by a political party. It was purely my initiative, and then obviously together with Nick Goodall and Michael Redell, when we actioned it.
So why? Why did you action it?
So I can't speak on behalf of Nick or Michael, they would have their own motivations, but my own personal motivation, the primary one was just transparency around National's numbers. It's been quite clear that they've been a bit cagey about their numbers, refusing to release their documents and their modelling. But they put out enough information to make a start on it and build from there. So that was the primary driver. Just people deserve to have this kind of information. If you're $500 million short, that opens up questions of where they're going to find that money. Are they going to increase debt? Are they going to have to cut more services? A couple of sort of secondary reasons was there was a bit of talk on social media about whether economists were biased and what they focused on. Labour's GST policy got shredded. There were criticisms of the Greens and Te Pāti Māori's tax policies as well. And I didn't really agree with that at the time. The GST policy was shredded because it had been leaked 2 weeks earlier. And there's a lot of theory and research and public data out there about GST. So when economists, and back then it was economists from the left and right as well, jumped on to thread that, it was because we all knew what this policy would mean, which was not actually much money in people's pockets, and that there are better ways of supporting lower income people, and that's to give them cash and trust that they know what to do with that money. But National's policies were very bizarre, just like no one saw them coming, really niche areas, very little research to draw on, very little public data to draw on. So you had economists wanting to dig into it, but unable to dig into it, in particular because National hadn't released its costings. So you would have seen perhaps concerns expressed from time to time by some economists, but no real digging into things and getting into the detail, purely because there just wasn't information. So I think the criticisms of bias were a little overstated. There is bias, obviously. Everyone has bias. But a little bit overstated. And I just wanted to sort of demonstrate that economists can be better people than you think they are.
I was this was a question for more of the end of the conversation, but because you brought up other economists, you made a public statement where you said, in part, New Zealand's public-facing economists have a credibility issue both in bias and in competence. You kind of brought that up. Now, do you think that we, the public, us lowly receivers of all this information, are receiving? I'm trying to say, is there a disservice being committed on us? Are there dishonest actors, in your opinion, in the economist world that some news sources are using?
There are a lot of honest ones. So I put that message out, and then I followed up with a bunch of names that are commonly in the news and are reliable on the left and the right. But then I don't know if dishonest actors is quite. I probably wouldn't go that strongly, but
okay.
There are people who like lawyers. You hire a lawyer as your advocate, and there are lobby groups and businesses and even government agencies that will hire experts to advocate for certain positions. And so there are consultancies that will, you're buying a brand, you're buying a name. You will have probably heard people say that about KPMG and Deloitte and that kind of thing. And sometimes they'll do you a really good job if you ask them to do you a good job. But then other times, another service that consultancies sell is the brand and the rubber stamp and the illusion of a robustness.
I understand what you're talking about on some level. I used to work for News Talk ZB as sort of the lone progressive voice. We talked to Simon Wilson quite a lot from the New Zealand Herald, who's sort of a lefty in a world full of right voices. But you yourself also worked for the New Zealand Initiative for a while. That's pretty much seen by many people as a lobby group that favours the right as well. You appear to be, I don't know you personally, but being identified as being on the left. How did that work for you, like working in that world?
So at the analyst level within the initiative, it was people looking to do honest work. Now, I wouldn't say the same about people higher up that
Right.
organisation. I have a lot of respect for Eric Crampton. I recommend that lefties do listen to him. He's an honest. He comes at things from an honest angle. He doesn't always get every element that's of relevance to issues, and he focuses on, like we all do, focuses on issues that he's most interested in. But there are tensions, and yes, I would put Eric's work in a you can trust that as he's come in honestly. I wouldn't put all of the New Zealand Initiative's work in that space.
All right. Not to put you in an uncomfortable conversation about a former employer, but
That's fine. I've said this publicly before.
So let's just jump back to your research. I'm really interested in you kind of explained, or I kind of explained through reading the RNZ article, what the methodology was, that you looked at information from REINZ, or CoreLogic, I should say. You got information that was farmed out by National, and then you did your sums. Is there anything else about the methodology to get the research that you've released that you can explain to us so we understand a bit more where your numbers have come from?
Yeah, sure. So the basic approach. So when I started out on this project, one thing I was quite keen on exploring was whether National's own numbers make sense. So when you're doing some analysis, you can come up with what you think the best number is, but in the political world, things get exaggerated, stories get told, and there's a potential for exaggerating things. So the first thing that I wanted to do was see whether their own costings were reasonable. And then the second objective that I had was, and when I started out, I thought I might develop a whole separate model, which would have been what I thought a good model was. But when I picked up National information, I felt like their method was quite good. So Nicola Willis has been out there in the news saying that foreign buyers, they don't buy houses in all the same areas that New Zealanders buy houses. You won't see many foreign buyers buying in Kawerau, for example, right? But they do buy in places like Queenstown and Auckland, where there are higher prices. So you would expect your analysis then to find that foreign buyers are disproportionately buying higher houses in that $2 million threshold area. So you would expect higher revenue than if you just slapped a tax on anyone who's already living in New Zealand. So that's the core part of their model, is they look at the where foreign buyers buy, and they're in higher priced areas, and they combine those two data sets to come up with an estimate. There have been public statements by National that they had a few other steps to their method, but it's not really detailed in their policy document. So we're a little bit unclear about whether they actually modelled it, or whether they've just sort of acknowledged that these are things that, these are factors that exist that could have been modelled.
Can I ask something here as well? Because Nicola Willis, speaking to Jack Tame a few weeks ago on Q&A, she talked about how they did their modelling, and she talked about they set their average price at $2.9 million, and she talked about the buyer's market before 2018. But when Jack Tame challenged her on the last couple of years of sales, she went, "Oh, we're ignoring those. We're not going to pay attention to the last couple of years." And so it said to me, even though I don't know what their modelling was, none of us really do, that they were modelling it based on not the most recent information, but from information from several years ago, which as a layman feels like a bit of a hit and hope, if you know what I mean.
No. So this is no. So we are quite comfortable that the method that they followed is appropriate. And what Nicola Willis would have been meaning there is that the ban came in 2018. So you need to go back to that data to find how many foreign purchases there were at that time, and then extrapolate forward in time. So you can't look at the last couple of years' data, because there weren't many foreign sales happening because there was a ban in place. You got to go back to that 2018 data, and
but they're going to have to take their house prices from the last 12 to 18 months, because they're not going to take the house prices per average based on 2018 because the market was so much less.
So that's right. So you take the sales data from 2018 because that's when when foreign purchases were allowed, and you scale that up to 2023, and then you combine it with 2023 data, and so that's what we've done.
Okay.
And even when doing that, and National would have, I expected, done that as well. We still come up with really, really low numbers. So in addition to that, looking at Auckland and Queenstown and other high-priced areas, we expect they did as well, took the 2018 sales numbers and increased them to 2023, and then forecasted out to the years that they're expecting the revenue to come in, which is, I think, 2025 to 2028.
Yep.
And then we also inflated house prices from 2023 through to 2028 using Reserve Bank forecasts. But one thing that we've done, which we're not at all confident that National has done, is that common issue that has been raised in the media, which is removing Australian and Singaporean buyers because they're already able to buy.
Well, it's not just Australian and Singaporean, because now we're also hearing about tax treaties, and this is off the top of the dome. So if I miss one, forgive me. We're also talking India, China, UK, Canada, USA, Mexico. Are those included in your modelling? No.
So our modelling is not looking at that legal risk. It's if this policy is feasible, then these are the numbers that you could expect. So for clarity, if this policy is feasible, only removing Australia and Singapore, is that what you're saying? Yes, because that's the Australia and Singapore is around the residency status, whereas the countries that you've listed is around tax residence, which is a different thing, and the data around that is a lot messier. So we haven't tried to model that. What we've said is if they can implement the policy as they've stated it, there is still a $500 million fiscal hole.
So that's even worse. That's even worse, Sam. That means because we're being told, we the public, and it seems we're being told that you can't, likely, because John Key talked about it last weekend as well, about a stamp duty that he couldn't get in place, which is very similar to the tax that National's currently talking about, that you can't include those countries I just listed. So what you're saying is, this is the methodology I wanted to be clear on. If a supposed national government could include India, China, Japan, UK, USA, Mexico, and anyone else I may have missed out, if they can include them, they're still $500 million short. Therefore, if they can't include them, what does that make? That they're actually a full $700 million short? They've actually got no money at all?
Yes. So we have, where there's uncertainty, tried to be generous to National, not in order to fudge the numbers, but in order to protect against overly critical remarks.
Sure.
So we are very clear in emphasising that our best estimate is $210 million, and we think that's an overestimate.
Wow. So in other words, they're screwed either way. My words, obviously, not an academic or an economist's words. But I
wouldn't disagree.
But if indeed those countries with tax treaties can't be included, they're screwed 10 times over.
Yeah, well, potentially. I'm not a lawyer, and there's been some debate around that, but it does seem like there are considerable legal risks.
You've already said this, but it was a question I'll ask it anyway. Have you been fed any information from any source within any political party or sort of political lobby group for this report?
No.
Yeah. No. I just know because there's going to be some, and I'll use the word, dishonest actors out there that'll be going, so what's his bias? Well, where's he being fed this from? So it's good to get that officially on record.
Sure.
Any chances that you've looked over this and you've mulled over it and you think there might be like a version 2 coming out or a revised version of the research you've done? And if there was, what differences would you be looking at?
Me and Michael are perfectionists, so we are, thinking about further variations on the model. I won't say what they are because it might be that they're not able to be modelled.
Right.
I don't want to get hopes up. But it's just it's more or less more of the same. It's there's an extra feature that we could look at that might increase the revenue, but at the same time there's another feature that would decrease the revenue by about the same amount. So you're probably not going to see too much more from us, I don't think.
Okay. And just finally, and no one can know this, but seeing you've been deep into the numbers, do you have any perspective on why you think National won't release their full modelling? I know they don't have to release it, but it seems all the questions and queries that are out there at the moment could possibly be solved if they did release it. And if they're so confident in their numbers, do you have any inkling as to why they just ardently refuse to release that modelling?
Yeah, there's a couple of possibilities. The first is that the media was putting a lot of pressure on National to release its tax policy. And you can imagine that, inside the National Party, someone would have said, okay, we need to set a deadline. Like, this is the drop dead date for getting something out. And the analysis, while the method is pretty straightforward, it was tricky to put everything together. It was really, really tricky. It took a lot of hours in our weekends and evenings to get this done. And so you can imagine, like what we experienced, we got to a point of exhaustion. And if you had a deadline, you would have been quickly running out of time. And so it's quite possible that we see what's quite a good method in there, that they might have got to the point of exhausting that good method and then getting to the point where you're getting into a little bit more speculative assumptions, and just doing a guesstimate. And having that guesstimate be way wrong. And so, you don't want to be releasing documents that show you're doing a pretty decent job for part of it and then just completely stuffing it up with one big wrong number in there.
So you're saying, for clarity, you're saying that there's a chance that they don't want to release their modelling because they realise they've fudged a few things in their modelling.
Yeah. They took a stab. It might have even been an honest stab. But then the other possibility is, they did the modelling and then they saw the revenue results and they saw it was way less than what they needed, and then you pad the number to get the number that you need. I think everyone knows someone who has worked for a boss who's told them the answer that they're required to produce, right?
Yeah.
And that's a possibility as well. I don't have any idea about which one's more likely. But those are two real world possibilities that have come up in my life. I know people who have been in both those situations, and I'm sure you do too.
Hey, thank you so much for giving us some time today, Sam. We really appreciate your insight. That is economist Sam Warburton. Cheers for your time.